What's up? What's up? What's up? Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of the monthly Astro Forecast with me, your favorite astrologer, Mel of Divine Feminine Works. Hopefully this live or this replay is finding you well and in excellent spirits. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. This channel is everything tarot, astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you'll always be notified when I come out with new content. And speaking of content, head over to Instagram and hit that follow button. I've got loads of excellent daily content. Plus, I go live over there every Thursday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time for live tarot readings by sign. All right. So let's let the good people over on Twitter know that we are live so they can come over and join us. All right. So I have to just breathe for a second because Mercury retrograde is really kicking my ass right now. Okay. I am like hoping and praying that this live goes well without any malfunctions, because what ended up happening on Sunday when I do my normal, usual weekly astro forecast is that I had a malfunction. The live just cut off. I was streaming to YouTube and Facebook at the same time. And because of the malfunction, Facebook tagged it as spam and ended up suspending my account. So my whole ass account was suspended over a malfunction. Thankfully, it's been restored, but just shows you the power of this Mercury retrograde. Like, I can't stress it enough. And that is exactly what we have to look forward to this month, at least one of the things that we have to look forward to. But again, if you see things looking crazy, because I've already noticed that my camera is sort of going in and out of focus. I tried my best to fix it, but Mercury retrograde will retrograde. So the show must go on. We're just going to keep moving because I've got loads to tell you. A new month is upon us, new planetary energies, new things going on. And that's exactly what we're going to be discussing this evening. We're going to be discussing my favorite month of the year, September, because it's your girl's birthday on September 13th. So, it's my favorite month. So I don't know. I always love the feeling of September, and not just because it's my birthday or anything like that. More so because September is a very interesting month in terms of how it feels. I always remember as a kid, September always felt different, right? I guess it's because of that energetic shift between summer and autumn, right? Summer, you're out of school, you're having fun, you don't have a care in the world. And then come September, it's like the energy shifts so drastically, right? You're back in school. As an adult, you're back to work. It's like this back to reality kind of feeling. And it's interesting that, I phrase it that way, right? Like this dramatic shift in energy. And there's a lot about September that has to do with that. All right. But I'm going to get into that in a second. All right. So before we get started, just some housekeeping rules. All right. So number one, if you're joining me here on the live, please hit that like button on your way in. I would greatly appreciate it. Number two, now I know how we all can be, right? Because I watch plenty of lives, and sometimes they tend to drag on, and I start doing other things. I keep it on, but you start doing other things, cleaning, scrolling through Instagram, checking emails, all that great stuff. So these monthly astro forecasts tend to run pretty long because I go through each and every sign by rising sign, of course, to explain what you have in store for the month. All right. And so it can get very tedious. And if you have a rising sign that's like Capricorn, Aquarius, or Pisces, your sign isn't coming up for a while. Right. So in an effort to sort of help you out, anytime I'm changing signs, you're going to hear this sound. When you hear that sound, you'll know that I have changed signs, and that is your cue to listen up. All right. So again, anytime I change signs, you will hear this. All right. So that's number two. Right, of housekeeping rules. Number three, I want you to hit the chat or comment down below what you are looking forward to in September. Given that September is all about energy shifts and sort of, feeling different and entering a new season, tell me in the chat or in the comments down below what you are looking forward to this September. All right, so without further ado, let's get into it. All right, but first things first. If you are new to astrology, or even if you've been studying astrology for a while and you feel like you need a refresher, I created this thing called the Astrology Basics Cheat Sheet, which basically gives you the quick and dirty on everything you need to know to start learning astrology. Now, astrology is like a rabbit hole. You never stop learning, right? It's fun, it's so interesting, but there's a lot to learn and a lot of technical terms. So what I've done is I've put this cheat sheet together, which gives you the quick and dirty on the planets, the houses, the signs, and the aspects. These are the 4 pillars of astrology that you must know if you want to understand anything and if you want to eventually move on to more advanced learning. If you're looking to cop this cheat sheet, the link will be in the description box below. You just got to give up your email and you are good to go. All right, so download that ASAP. It is definitely a gem. All right, so well, before we get into the nitty gritty, let's chat for a second, all right? And chat about what the month has in store generally and some of the themes that are going to play out this month, right? So like I said before, there's something about September that just feels different, right? It's the end of summer, things get serious, but it's like a drastic change in seasons. Now, I'm a New York girl, but I'm currently in Florida. And it's interesting because I have this conversation with my sister every single year. It's like right after Labor Day, no lie, the weather in New York, it's like it does a complete 180. Like the day before Labor Day, it'll be like 90 degrees. And like the Tuesday after Labor Day, it will definitely be like 60. And it's like as soon as Labor Day is over, you know that the seasons have changed, right? And September is one of those months. September and March, I feel like, are the 2 months of the year where the seasons change so dramatically. You know, March, we go from winter to spring. And then in September, we go from summer to fall, right? And so there's 3 sort of themes that are playing out this month, all right? And the first is the autumnal equinox, right? So around the 22nd of September, we have the autumnal equinox, which is when the sun is directly over the equator. So it gives us equal hours of daylight and of nighttime. And this is important because it's all about balance, right? So from the spring equinox, which is around March 23rd, between the spring equinox and the autumnal equinox, we have an increase, right? We have an increase in the hours of daylight, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. And then once the autumnal equinox hits, things sort of balance out and then we start decreasing in daylight hours. And it's interesting and no coincidence that the autumnal equinox always falls around the beginning of Libra season because it's all about balance, right? It's all about finding balance in our lives, balance between our bodies and our souls, balance between ourselves and how we deal with other people. So it's more than just, okay, the sun is going to start setting a lot earlier. It's really about finding a balance, okay? And so I find that around the time of the autumnal equinox, I feel like instinctively a lot of issues in our lives that may be unbalanced, I feel like at that time, those things tend to come to the surface in an effort to sort of put things in balance. And again, that's very characteristic of Libra season in general. But that's one of the things that we have to look forward to this month. The second thing, or theme, I should say, is that September is all about the harvest. It's all about harvest time. It's all about reaping what you sow. There's so many different stories, allegories, anecdotes that sort of play into this, right? If you look at the symbol for Virgo, right, it is a young maiden, right, and she's holding shafts of wheat. And wheat, it symbolizes the harvest. It symbolizes abundance. It symbolizes fertility. You know, the Virgo is symbolized by the Virgin. So it has that underlying theme of fertility with it, right? And wheat, particularly this time of year and the harvest season in general, it really shows the gestation from conception to birth. Okay, so there's this element of reaping what you sow. Right? You sow the seed and then you're able to reap the fruit. And it's not just about manifestation. It's about, conceptualizing something, giving birth to it, I guess that is about manifestation, right? But at this time, a lot of the fruits of our labor are going to come to fruition and we're going to be able to enjoy them. So it's a time to really reflect on the work that you've done, or maybe reflect on the work that you didn't do. Because if you're not reaping anything at harvest time, it sort of lets you know where you have to work harder, where you have to put a little emphasis. Patricia Jean, who happens to be my sister, says, I'm counting down the days. Yeah, she's counting down the days to Labor Day when that New York weather changes, because I know in New York it's pretty hot right now. But yeah, it'll get much cooler right after Labor Day. So yeah, so I feel like September, it's all about reflection, right? Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is all about our communications and our thoughts. And with Mercury going retrograde, which I will get to in a second, it's all about reflection. Reflection on, our harvest. What do we have? What work did we put in? Where do we need to put in more work in the future so that the next harvest season, we have all of this abundance to sort of enjoy, right? So it's really an interesting time in terms of seeing where we are with, what we're trying to manifest at this time, right? Now, one of my favorite stories that sort of symbolizes the energy of September generally is the Greek mythology of Demeter and Persephone. Now, Demeter is sort of symbolic of Virgo energy in many ways, which I'll get to in a second. But if you're not familiar with the story of Demeter and Persephone, Demeter is the mother of Persephone. Persephone is a beautiful young girl, and they spend their time, planting seeds and harvesting, because Demeter is the goddess of grain and abundance and harvest. Right? She's that emblematic Virgo energy. And so Persephone was beautiful, and Hades, the lord of the underworld, took a liking to her, right? But, no one wanted to go down to the underworld because it's the underworld, right? So it was kind of hard for Hades to sort of court Persephone because, again, who would want to go down to the underworld? So rather than court her, he ended up kidnapping her. And Demeter wakes up one day and she can't find Persephone, and she is searching far and wide. But there are a whole bunch of other like demigods and goddesses who saw Hades kidnap Persephone, but they weren't trying to say anything. They were all about snitches get stitches, so they kept their mouths shut, right? And so Demeter is searching the earth for her daughter, and she's so distraught. And in her anger and frustration, she basically scorches the earth. She dries up everything. Anything that was fruitful became barren, and she kept it that way until Persephone was returned. Now, the story drags on because there's this whole agreement made between Zeus and Hades in order to release Persephone, right? But what ends up happening is Persephone ends up spending 6 months on Earth with her mother and 6 months in Hades with her new man, Hades, right? So for the 6 months that she is on Earth, the earth is plentiful, it's bountiful, it's abundant, it's fruitful. But for the 6 months that she is in Hades, everything is dry, it's barren, and it's unfruitful. And that's where we get the story. That's where we get the seasons, right? That's also where we get the phrase, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Because Demeter was scorned and she basically dried up everything on the earth so nobody could be abundant, right? And what I love about this story is, number one, it demonstrates the seasons, right? And how September feels so different because the seasons change so dramatically. And that sort of plays into the story of Demeter, because as soon as she realized that Persephone was gone, she basically dried everything up, right? And so it not only explains the seasons, but it explains the harvest. It explains abundance, especially when Persephone is here on Earth. There's also this dichotomy between mother, daughter, and maiden woman. Okay. And this is important because this sort of demonstrates the what I was talking about before with conception and birth. There's this maturity, this energy of maturity that September has to it. So when Persephone was kidnapped, she was a young girl, right? But then she went to the underworld. She was able to see all the ills of the world, right? And she has a man now. So she grew up. And so when her mother finally saw her, she was no longer a little girl. She was a woman. Like, she was a full-fledged woman. She was a queen. She was the queen of the underworld. And that sort of shows us how not only we mature, but our manifestations mature as well. And you kind of have to let them grow up. Demeter had to let go of Persephone and let her grow up, mature, and become her own woman, and not just be known as a daughter, but be known as a queen and a wife. And so this is a lesson for all of us, right? I mean, it's the essence of life. Sometimes you have to let things go. You have to let them mature on their own. And that's so incredibly relevant when it comes to our manifestations, when it comes to the seeds that we're trying to plant. You can't, smother them. You can't hover over them. You have to just let them grow and let them mature on their own until they can be harvested, until they're fully grown, they're mature, they're abundant, they're fruitful. So September is so full of this energy of not only harvest, but of growth, of maturity, of gestation. All of these things and all of these themes typically play out in September, and in very different ways, right? It all depends on where Virgo is in your chart. It all depends on what's going on in your environment. But these are sort of the themes that you should pay attention to this month, because I feel like it's going to give you insight on where you need to grow, perhaps, what you need to let go of and sort of let nature run its course. Maybe where you need to apply a little more pressure, and maybe where you need to put in a little more work. So again, the next time the harvest season comes, you actually have something to harvest. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to reflect on and rethink this September in particular, because we've got Mercury retrograde. Okay. And now the third theme that we have sort of plays off of this harvest energy, because the full moon in September is known as the harvest moon. And the explanation is that it's called the harvest moon because it's particularly bright in the sky, which allowed farmers to continue harvesting throughout the night. Okay. So whatever is going to be illuminated at this full moon this month, I feel like it's going to show you a lot of, again, that issue of reaping what you sow. Whether you've put in the work or whether you haven't, the results of your work or lack thereof is going to be, it's like a spotlight is going to be put on it, right? And so it's really going to allow you to reflect on what you've done and what you haven't done to either further yourself, to assist in your security. All of those things are going to come out at this full moon. It's also known as the harvest moon because it's the nearest full moon to the autumn equinox. Okay. So again, I feel like September is one of those months where it's really going to let you know, like, how you've been doing, what you've been doing, if you've been doing the right things. Sorry, just need to put that to the side. If you've been doing the right things, here's another thing. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's not necessarily just about planting seeds, right? Are you planting the right seeds? Because what may end up happening is at harvest time, you realize that you planted something you didn't want to plant, and it's come to fruition, but it's not the fruit that you want. If you're allergic to apples and you find that you have an entire whole ass apple tree, how good is that going to be to you? Right? So I feel like some of us are really going to be proud of ourselves because we've tended to our gardens, we've harvested the right seeds, we've let them grow and mature, and now we have this bountiful harvest to enjoy. Others of us are going to be like, well, damn, I didn't plant shit. I don't have anything for the winter, right? And some of us are going to be like, I thought this was a pumpkin seed. Why are these peaches? Like, you're going to realize that maybe you planted the wrong seeds, right? So it's a very enlightening sort of time. I feel like it's an enlightening sort of month. Very interesting. Seasons change. And then we're going to make our way into Libra season, where it's going to be heavy on relationships. So it's going to be an interesting month nonetheless, but I think it's going to be very good. All right. So let us get into the month and see what we've got going on. All right. So in September, we have Venus going into Virgo. We've got our favorite Mercury retrograde. Then we've got the Pisces, which is that harvest moon I was just talking about. Then we have the sun entering Libra and ushering Libra season, which coincides with the autumnal equinox. Then we have Mercury going back into Virgo. Then we have the new moon of the month, which is in the sign of Libra. And then we have Venus moving into one of its favorite spots, which is Libra. All right, so let's get into it I guess. All right, so the first thing that we have up is Venus is going to enter into Virgo on September 5th. Okay, so Venus is making 2 moves this month. So we're definitely going to be feeling an energy shift when it comes to things like love and money. Okay, now Venus is in fall in Virgo, which means it's not very comfortable. Venus is treated like a queen in Virgo's sister sign of Pisces. But in Virgo, Venus is like, I don't want to say a secondhand citizen, but she's not particularly favored in Virgo. You know, Venus is all about love and, you know, art, right? Things that are necessarily abstract that you can't put your finger on. Virgo detailed. And so Virgo can't necessarily pinpoint certain things when it comes to love or even money, right? And that's why Venus is a bit uncomfortable in Virgo. But if I had to sum up Venus in Virgo, it would be like this. You know, the 5 love languages? Venus in Virgo equals acts of service. That would be how you show love. How you show appreciation is by doing practical things for people and being of service. So like running errands, picking up your dry cleaning, paying attention to the little things, right? So even though Venus in Virgo tends to be a bit boring and dry, imagine being with a partner and one day you casually say, you know, I love Tiffany bracelets. Casually. You're not even saying it so that the person buys it for you, right? You just casually say it in a conversation. And then 6 months later, you get this, you know, blue Tiffany box and it has a Tiffany bracelet. And you're super surprised. You're like, whoa, like you acted like, I can't believe you remembered. And the person who's probably a Virgo would be like, of course, I remember everything. That is the essence of Venus in Virgo. Remembering those tiny little details that may seem insignificant, but really make the biggest difference, right? And that's how you show love, right? Or sometimes even just being an ear to listen to, someone to vent to. That's definitely Venus in Virgo kind of vibes. Now, another reason why Venus is not so comfortable in Virgo is because love and money have to make rational sense. Love needs to make sense and it needs to have a purpose. If Virgo can't fit love in a box that's perfectly labeled and can be put on a shelf, then things don't feel right. Okay, so that's why Venus is kind of uncomfortable in Virgo. Same thing with money. Money has to make rational sense. Venus in Virgo is not about spending frivolously or spending on things that aren't useful. Virgo is all about utility. And so Venus in Virgo is like, I'm not going to drop $2,000 on a t-shirt, right? One of these designer t-shirts. if it doesn't make sense. I could get the same thing at Target for $2. I would rather do that. That's definitely the essence of Venus in Virgo. Also, Venus in Virgo lends itself to feeling guilty for sort of spending on yourself or giving yourself too much attention. Anything that's overly self-indulgent is sort of anti-Virgo. So it's definitely one of those transits where you may feel guilty for splurging. You may feel guilty for buying that luxury item, all right? Because it's not useful and it's frivolous, and Venus in Virgo just doesn't roll that way. Okay. So again, Venus in Virgo is all about feeling good, providing services for others, and that's how you show affection. That's how you show love. But the flip side of Venus in Virgo is that particularly when speaking about relationships, you may be extremely critical, not only of yourself, but of your partner. And that could lead to things like nitpicking, being anxious. So communication with Venus in Virgo can be very anxiety filled. It can definitely be one of those things where it's kind of just annoying. I mean, imagine having someone nitpick every single thing that you do, criticize you, check your grammar, correct you all the time. That's definitely Venus in Virgo. So forewarned is forearmed. All right. So moving on, we get to the fan favorite, which is Mercury retrograde, which goes retrograde on September 9th. But we've been feeling the effects of Mercury retrograde since last week. Okay. This one is going to be, I'm not going to say one for the books, but I think like it's definitely going to be a Mercury retrograde that many of us will not forget. Okay. So it's in Libra. And the lovely part about that is that this is one of those Mercury retrogrades where you will most likely have an ex coming back, because Libra is all about relationships. This is going to be revisiting relationships, redoing certain relationships. Now, everyone has a different viewpoint on whether you should get back with someone who comes back at you during Mercury retrograde. And the way I see it is do whatever the fuck you want. There's no hard and fast rule. Some people are like, no, you shouldn't. Other people are like, yeah, go for it. I mean, just do what you want. Like, if ex come back and you want to rekindle that flame, go for it. Some people believe that, you know, if you throw something up, you don't re-eat it, right? So some people are really about no when it comes to revisiting exes, but it's up to you. So again, this is a chance to reflect on past relationships, but obviously not just romantic relationships. This allows you to sort of rethink, reassess, and revamp any sort of relationships. But one of the things that Mercury retrograde is particularly good about, especially with Mercury in Libra, is that you can definitely renegotiate contracts. Business transactions, you can sort of review them. Mercury retrograde is the perfect time to review contracts, because this is when you're going to catch the details. This is when you're going to see the loopholes. This is when you're going to really understand what it is that you signed. Okay. Now, signing, you don't necessarily want to do that during Mercury retrograde. I mean, that's one of the rules that I like to live by, because you will undoubtedly miss something, but it allows you to rethink, review all the re's. You can definitely do that during Mercury retrograde, okay? One of the other themes of Mercury retrograde while in Libra is that it can allow us to revisit and reevaluate where we lack balance and equity in our lives. And this goes perfectly hand in hand with the theme of September, like I was talking about. The whole autumn equinox, how we have equal hours of daylight and nighttime, is all about finding balance. And Mercury in Libra is going to show you where things are imbalanced, and it gives you a chance to revisit them. Maybe not necessarily like, you know, tip the scales in terms of taking action, but you're definitely going to have the ability to revisit those things and see how and when you can balance those scales. Okay. And of course, the usual Mercury retrograde fuckery. You've got, you know, electronics acting crazy, miscommunication, you know, hitting reply all when you should have just replied to the person who sent you the email. You know the deal. All of that stuff is still fair game, right? So keep that in mind. I'm sure you don't have to keep it in mind, because I'm sure you already realize that's probably kicking your ass right now too. And if it is, let me know in the chat, or let me know in the comments if you are already feeling this Mercury retrograde. All right. Fun times as always. All right, so next up, we have the harvest moon, which is the full moon in Pisces, which is going down on September 10th. It's actually going down at 5:58 a.m. on September 10th, and it's going to be going down at 17 degrees Pisces. Now, full moons are all about illumination, right? And remember, I stated before that this is the harvest moon. It tends to be a bit brighter because it allowed the farmers to harvest throughout the night. So I feel like it's going to shine a big spotlight on wherever it's going down in your chart, number one. And it's also going to show you a lot about what you've harvested, whether you harvested at all or whether you harvested the wrong fruit, right? Or if you have the wrong fruit to harvest. You know what I mean? All right. In terms of the astrology for this full moon, it's going to be a bit surprising, okay? Because we have Uranus in the mix. The sun is going to be trine Uranus and the moon is going to be sextile Uranus. So this is all about expecting the unexpected, right? This goes to what I was saying before. Like, you thought you planted apple seeds, and at this full moon, it's going to show you that you planted peaches. And you're like, what the entire fuck? I didn't plant peaches, but apparently you did. So it's about expecting the unexpected. Anytime you have Uranus in the mix, I like to call it the hand of God, because that's when God moves things around. God makes things happen that you couldn't possibly do on your own, but it's for your highest good, right? But it's also very surprising, and it may make you feel like you don't have any control and things are happening and you don't understand. It's just things moving around. So whenever you have Uranus in the mix, it's really about surrender. You got to surrender and just let the chips fall where they may. All right. And then once the dust settles, you can assess and then sort of make moves then. But by and large, with the full moon in Pisces, expect the unexpected. Okay. And Pisces as a sign is very dreamy. It's all about illusions. It's all about fantasy, all about ideals. So it's going to pretty much be a very emotional full moon, because Pisces is super emotional, number one. It's also going to be a very intuitive time, especially with Uranus in the mix. So you're going to want to put a gold star next to September 10th, because around that time, I'm not going to say brace yourselves, but again, expect the unexpected, because I think anything can happen and it may elicit a very emotional response that could be good or bad. It doesn't necessarily have to be just bad, right? Full moons also have that theme of balance, right? Because we've got the sun on one extreme and the moon on the other. So again, it may highlight places in your life that are imbalanced. It may show you something that's like wildly out of balance that you probably didn't realize. And one of the themes that plays out with this particular new moon, because it's the moon in Pisces and the sun in Virgo, it's sort of like your spiritual body versus your physical body, or your ability to have faith in the unseen versus your reliance on things that are tangible and that can be proven, right? It can be a very jarring dichotomy, because it's, whenever you're talking about Pisces, you're talking about the unseen, you're talking about spirit, you're talking about your soul, you're talking about your subconscious. So again, I think this full moon is going to be pretty emotional. It's going to be a bit jarring, because there's going to be, Uranus is in the mix. So again, expect the unexpected. But it's also going to be eye-opening. I think for some, it's going to be eye-opening in terms of your spirituality, perhaps in terms of your repressed emotions, all of that great stuff that most of us don't like to face anyway, right? Yeah. So it's going to be one of those situations. But again, anything that happens that's out of your control is for your highest good. So keep that in mind with the full moon. All right. So next up, on the 22nd, we have the autumnal equinox, but we also have the sun moving into Libra, marking Libra season. All right. And so Libra season is all about relationships, and not just, typical relationships, not even just relationships generally. It's also our relationship with ourselves. The good thing about relationships is that they allow us to see ourselves from a more objective point of view, because in my opinion, relationships mirror who we actually are. And so Libra season it's not as, emotionally jarring as that sounds, but Libra season tends to be a time that is social, a time that we can sort of stop and smell the roses, because Libra is ruled by Venus. It's also a time where we can tap into our creativity. It's a time where we can connect with people through things like art, music, things of that nature. It's also about finding peace above anything else, right? Because Libra likes things to be balanced, likes things to be peaceful and harmonious. And so Libra season, especially with the sun in there, it may put a battery in your back, depending on where it's going down in your chart. It may put a battery in your back to find peace and harmony wherever it is in your chart. So let's say you have Libra as your 6th house of work and health. I feel like during Libra season, your focus is kind of like finding harmony and peace in your daily routine, perhaps at work, even with coworkers, trying to have more peaceful and harmonious relations with coworkers. You get the point. So I feel like by and large, a lot of times during Libra season, we just try to harmonize and equalize things in our lives. Now, Libra is great. They're great. They're charismatic. They're people, right? That's why they're the relationship sign. But the flip side of that energy is things like people pleasing, just one of those situations where you may not voice your opinion because you don't want to rock the boat. You just want to keep the peace at all costs. It also lends itself to things like indecisiveness. What I love about Libra energy is that it can see both sides of a situation. It's great for being a mediator because you can see both sides and come to a harmonious settlement. It's not great for making decisions because you can see both sides. And so both sides become attractive. You understand both sides. And so it makes it hard to make decisions. Okay. So that's one thing to sort of be mindful of during Libra season. Let's see what else we have here. Diplomacy and friendship are two also major themes of Libra and Libra season. So it's a great time to make new friends, especially because Libra is a cardinal sign. Being able to strike up a conversation with somebody, especially when it comes to things like art, beauty, fashion, it kind of becomes a little easier, right? So being social, friendly, all of that stuff, you may find that you tap into your inner charismatic person, which makes it a little easier. Okay. And then on the flip side, we have things like being self-serving, passive aggressive behavior is also very characteristic of Libra. So that's something to look out for. And also a bit of superficiality. Libra tends to be a tad bit superficial, no shade. And so that's something that may play itself out during Libra season. All right, so let's keep it moving. Next up, we've got, where are we? All right, next up, we've got Mercury retrograding back into Virgo on September 23rd. This is important because obviously Mercury is changing signs, but Mercury is going to be retrograding back into its home sign of Virgo. So Mercury, that retrograde energy is going to be super potent, right? So retrograde is officially from September 9th to October 2nd. But then on September 23rd, Mercury is going to go back into Virgo until October 2nd. So for the last third of the month, Mercury is going to be in its home sign. So the energy is going to be super comfortable, super potent, super mixy, all of that great stuff. There's going to be an emphasis on details, on your daily routine, on being very critical, but all of that Mercury retrograde energy is still going to be rampant. So it's almost like the littlest things are going to be all fucked up, right? The littlest piece of machinery, right? The shortest sentence in that contract is, grammatically incorrect. That kind of little pesky, annoying thing. That's the essence of Mercury retrograde in Virgo. But again, the good part about Mercury retrograde is it allows you a do-over. It allows you to revamp, revisit, reimagine, reassess, reevaluate, all of those things. And particularly the fact that Virgo concerns itself with things like work and health. This is the time where you can really take pen to paper and really revamp plans. This is the time that you can get healthy, perhaps revisiting a diet or a health regimen. Your daily routine, your to-do list, all of these things can be revamped with Mercury retrograde. And although that doesn't sound like fun, it actually sounds hellish, if you ask me. But it's good. It's necessary. It's the essence of like September, right? Getting organized, getting to work, getting efficient, all that great stuff. And so Mercury retrograde, especially when it retrogrades back into Virgo, will give you the energy and the motivation to do some of those things. Okay. Then next up, we have got the new moon in Libra going down on September 25th. Okay. So that's going down at 5:54 p.m. on September 25th. And it's going to be happening at 2 degrees Libra. It's interesting because 2 degrees is the Taurus degree. And Taurus is also ruled by Venus, and Libra is ruled by Venus. So this is by and large going to be a great new moon to plant things having to do with money, having to do with stability, right? Relationships that are valuable to you, whatever criteria you have for relationships, you can sort of plant the seeds for those at this new moon, and it's going to be perfect for that. This is going to be starting, because Libra is a cardinal sign. If you're trying to start a new relationship, you're going to want to plant those seeds at the new moon. Even if you want to mend old relationships, I feel like the new moon in Libra is going to be perfect for that. Again, because it's happening at the second degree, which is the degree of Taurus. So Taurus is about things that are sturdy, that are tried and true. So an existing relationship, maybe it's been fractured over the last couple of weeks, months, or years. I feel like you can plant the seeds to mend those relationships at the new moon. And I think those seeds will grow into the right kind of fruit in the coming future. So that's something to think about with this new moon in Libra. Now, the new moon, in terms of the astrology for that new moon, it's going to be opposite Jupiter, which is going to be at 3 degrees Aries. Okay. And this is going to give you a sense of motivation. It's going to put a battery in your back. And it's going to allow you to be very bold and direct in whatever you're trying to manifest at this new moon, okay? And with the presence of Jupiter, anything done at this new moon will likely be successful and likely be opportunistic. So I feel like that's one of the new moons that you may not want to sleep on, right? I think that that's one of those new moons that you're definitely going to want to be proactive, because I think some really great stuff can come out of it, okay? It's also going to be conjunct to Mercury retrograde. And this also plays into what I was talking about with respect to mending old relationships. So Mercury is going to be retrograde in Libra. The new moon is going to be in Libra. It's all about relationships. So this is definitely the new moon where you want to get your ex back. If you're trying to plant those seeds, do it at the new moon, because the astrology is ripe for that. Okay. This is about revisiting past conversations and communications in relationships. This could be about the return of a relationship that was part of your daily routine. So someone that was really a staple in your life. And if they're not a staple in your life anymore, again, I feel like that new moon is going to be perfect for mending those relationships. And the general Mercury retrograde stuff, it gives you a do-over. It gives you a chance to redo the relationship, perhaps in a better and more advantageous way. So along with the full moon in Pisces, right? I told you to put a gold star next to the full moon in Pisces. I want you to put a gold star next to the new moon in Libra, because I think the moon cycle this month is going to be particularly advantageous. So keep that in mind. All right. Moving on, we move to the last thing of the month, which is Venus moving into its home sign of Libra on September 29th. So Venus loves being in Libra. Libra allows Venus to be expressive, to be artistic, to be relationship oriented. So Venus is coming from Virgo, and Virgo was like, if it doesn't fit into a perfect box, I don't want it. Venus was like, I can't stand this. Fuck you. And then Venus moves into her home sign, and like Libra embraces her with open arms, right? So Venus in Libra is all about being charming, charismatic, magnetic, right? We all know a Libra or two, right? And there's this way, they have this way with people that's just sort of unexplainable. It's charismatic. They can get along with anybody. A lot of times they can talk and relate to a lot of different people. And so when Venus is in Libra, we all kind of get a little bit of that Venusian Libra energy, which is great. So it's a great time to be social. It's a great time to make new friends. It's a great time to just put yourself out there. It's also great for things like art and beauty, okay? And fashion also. So if you work in any of those industries, Venus in Libra sort of gives you an extra boost of creativity. So keep that in mind as well. This is also about negotiating, diplomacy, sort of all of the energy of the sun in Libra translates to Venus in Libra as well. But with Venus in Libra, it sort of pinpoints it a bit more when it comes to relationships and money. You may find that you want to spend more money on things like clothes, makeup, luxury items, things like that. When Venus is in Libra, you definitely feel all of that. But the thing is, when it comes to relationships and Venus in Libra, it's not like a Venus in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is lovey-dovey, it's affectionate, it's tender. Venus in Libra can be a bit superficial. So it's about a relationship, but there's still that element of detachment, especially emotionally. So it's not one of those seasons where love is super idyllic or where love is super romantic. It's more like that friendship kind of love, to be honest. So keep that in mind if you're starting a new relationship. It may not be real hot and heavy, especially not like a Venus in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio is like I meet you and I want to snatch your soul kind of a thing. Venus in Libra keeps it kind of cool. You know, there's that underlying, like, I wouldn't even say underlying sexual tension. I just feel like Venus in Libra is more like, okay, we're cool. We start off like friends, you know, we vibe over certain things. There's obviously a shared connection to something, but it's not overly romantic, overly idyllic. It's also not completely detached either, but there is a little wiggle room when it comes to emotions with Venus and Libra. So that's something to keep in mind. All right. So that is the month in a nutshell. There isn't too much going on this month, but I feel like what overshadows everything is that damn Mercury retrograde. I feel like that's what everyone's going to focus on. That's what we're all going to be feeling. But then other than that, it's sort of a regular month. But we do have, so Venus will be in its home sign of Libra at the end of the month. And when Mercury retrogrades back into Virgo, Mercury will be in its home sign. So those energies are going to be felt a little more prominently. But other than that, it's just a regular month, and try to navigate Mercury retrograde as best you can, because come next month, we're going to be entering eclipse season, which is always an interesting time. But to be honest, I feel like the month is not going to be too bad. All right. So now we are going to get into the individual signs, what you guys can expect for the month of September. If you're new here, I always do these by rising signs, and asterisk, all horoscopes are done by your rising sign. Sometimes it definitely relates to your sun sign, but they're mainly done by rising sign. All right. And if you don't know your rising sign, the best thing to do is to go to a site like astro.com, put in your birth time, date, and location, and it'll generate your natal chart. In your natal chart, you'll be able to see your ascendant, which is also known as your rising sign. All right. And so that's the sign you need to listen out for during the rest of this live. All right. And you may be cross watching for someone too, because I know I tend to do that. If there's someone special in my life, I usually like to check out what's going on for them this month too, and see if it relates to me in any way. So if that's you are more than welcome here. So again, you'll hear this sound. Oops. You'll hear that sound when I change signs. So that'll be your cue to listen up. All right. So let's get into it. And the first sign, as always, we start at the beginning, and we start with Aries Rising. All right, Aries. So this month you have an emphasis on your 5th house of creativity and children, your 6th house of work and health, your 7th house of relationships, and your 12th house of the unknown. All right. So let's get into it. So when we first start out the month, Venus is still in Leo, because Venus isn't going to go into Virgo until the 5th. So the very beginning of the month, you start the month with Venus in Leo. All right. And that's your 5th house. So when it comes to romance, even when it comes to money, there's this air of fun and childlike energy that you enter the month with. Basically speaking, when it comes to romance and money, you're still on summer mode when the month starts. All right. You're going to want to have fun. You're going to want to listen to your inner child, and you're just want to be creative and express yourself. I think that's the best use of that energy while Venus is still in Leo. Then when the sun moves into Virgo, right, we're going to have not only the sun in your 6th house of Virgo, but we'll also have Mercury, and we will have Venus. Now, Mercury isn't going to transit back into your 6th house until mid-month, actually more towards the end of the month. But there is still going to be this 6th house emphasis of work and health, definitely while the sun is in Virgo. So during that time, you're definitely going to want to get organized, efficient, and be of service to others. That's going to be that sort of getting back to reality feeling that September always gives us. All right. So you're going to want to focus on work. You're going to want to focus on health and being of service to others. And then by the time we enter Libra season, you're going to have an emphasis on your 7th house of relationships. So you're going to have the sun, Mercury, Venus, and the new moon in your 7th house. So come Libra season, you're definitely going to be relationship minded. And I feel like the new moon is going to be the perfect time for you in particular to plant those seeds of relationships, right? Whether you're trying to find a new one or whether you're trying to mend an old one. But definitely above all of the signs, I feel like relationship issues are going to hit you the hardest during Libra season, and definitely during that new moon. And then the full moon in Pisces is going to highlight your 12th house of the unknown. So you may find that around the full moon, something that was a complete secret to you may be revealed. Okay. So something surprising that you had absolutely no idea of or about will be uncovered to you, right? This may also illuminate your spiritual side. So you may find that the full moon in Pisces is going to sort of light a fire under you, so to speak, when it comes to your spirituality or your religion or your faith. This could also uncover hidden creative talents that you had no idea about. Regardless, I feel like the full moon in Pisces is going to be quite surprising, not just for you, but for all of us. But I feel like it's going to illuminate a lot about your soul, perhaps your purpose here in life, and maybe some creativity that you really just didn't know about. All right. I'm trying to keep these short and sweet because we're already at 53 minutes, so I can't necessarily go completely in full detail for everyone, but hopefully what I'm doing is sufficient. All right. So that was Aries Rising. So now we are up to Taurus Rising. So Taurus Rising for September, you have an emphasis on your 4th house of home and family, your 5th house of creativity and children, your 6th house of work and health, and your 11th house of friendship and goals. Okay. So when we start out the month, Venus is going to be in Leo, and that's going to be in your 4th house of home. So I feel like your familial relationships, particularly your relationship with your parents, is going to come into focus at the top of the month. I also feel like you may want to sort of beautify your home space. You may be dealing with financial stuff with respect to your apartment or your home or any property that you own. This also may be about starting a home business, doing some craft work at home, because the 4th house is all about home and Leo is all about creativity and Venus is about creativity. So some of you may be making a hobby into a business at home, which is funny because that's exactly what I'm doing, and I am a Taurus rising. So I can definitely say that that is definitely one of the ways that this transit may play out. But regardless, I feel like that's what you're coming into the month with. And then come Virgo season, your 5th house is going to be illuminated. You're going to have the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in your 5th house. Now, even though Virgo is serious, the 5th house is all about having fun. So I feel like Virgo season is going to be about having fun, socializing with people, expressing yourself, being a little quirky, standing apart from the crowd, all of that fun stuff, right? And it may be a little romantic because with Venus in Virgo in your 5th house, I think that there's going to be an emphasis on romantic partnerships. If you have children, those relationships with your children are also going to be highlighted as the 5th house rules children and Venus rules relationships. This is going to be an interesting time, right? With Mercury retrograde in your 5th house. This is going to be exes coming back or revisiting romantic relationships. Okay. So if you're not looking to have your ex come back, it may be a frustrating time. But if you are, you may want to plant those seeds and get that ball rolling because the astrology is perfect for that. Then in Libra season, your 6th house of work and health is going to be highlighted. With that new moon in Libra, I think this is going to be a great time to revamp your daily routine. If there are any clients or customers you worked with in the past, I feel like they may be coming around, or you may be able to mend those relationships or get them back on track with the new moon in Libra. But by and large, I feel like Libra season is going to be about getting healthy, getting organized, and getting efficient. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to illuminate your 11th house of friendship and goals. So this full moon may find a lifelong goal or maybe a large ambition that you've had, that you've been working on. You may be able to reap the fruits and harvest those at the full moon. This may also illuminate things having to do with your friendships and associations, right? Maybe those relationships may be imbalanced. And I feel like the full moon is going to bring your attention to that. But regardless, I feel like there's going to be a big illumination on your friendships, your goals, and your ambitions. All right. So that's what's going on for you, Taurus. All right. So we are moving right along. Next up, we have Gemini Rising. So for you guys, September is all about an emphasis on your 3rd house of ideas and communication, your 4th house of home and family, your 5th house of creativity and children, and your 10th house of career. So at the top of the month, there's an emphasis on your third house with Venus and Leo. I feel like summer into the beginning of the month, or I should say the end of August into the beginning of August, is going to be probably a busy time for you. I think many of you might be dating, socializing, like doing a lot, which is exactly how you guys like it. You guys like to be busy. You guys like to be social. And I think Venus and Leo gives you the absolute perfect opportunity for that. Okay. When it comes to relationships, Venus and Leo in the third house lends itself to friendships and friend zoning people. So any relationships formed under that transit usually tend to have an air of like, you're the homie, you're my bro, you're my sis. It's not necessarily lovey-dovey, I want to marry you kind of thing. So keep that in mind with anyone that you're dating, any relationships that you start under that transit. Astrology is not absolute. It's not to say that that's exactly what's going to happen, but that's sort of what the energy lends itself to. So if you find that you're meeting people, but you're kind of getting friend zoned or things just aren't taking off and that you wanted to, that's probably why. Then during Virgo season, you're going to have an emphasis on your home and family and domestic affairs. And you're going to have the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in your fourth house. So suffice it to say, during Virgo season, I feel like it's all about getting organized and efficient at home, sort of doing a little bit of cleaning and organizing and labeling and putting everything back where it needs to be. There's also this energy of sort of being of service to family members, particularly with Venus in Virgo in your fourth house. So those familial relationships, probably your relationships with your parents, maybe your grandparents, or actually people that you may live with, being of service to them and having them be of service to you is a theme that plays out during Virgo season. Then during Libra season, you're going to have an emphasis on your fifth house of creativity and children. This is going to be great because, again, it lends itself to romance because the fifth house deals with romance. So I feel like by and large between August and September for you, Gemini Rising, romance and dating is something that may be emphasized in different ways, but emphasized nonetheless. Right? And I feel like at the new moon, you can plant seeds related to creative endeavors. This is a great moon to plant seeds if you want to start a new creative business or a hobby, if you want to express yourself, if you want to conceive children. This is a great new moon. The new moon in Libra is going to be perfect for that. Even if you're looking to adopt anything new with children, you're going to want to do at the new moon in Libra. Okay. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to illuminate your 10th house of career and public life. Okay. And so this is going to be a full moon that maybe shows you something surprising that you haven't really paid attention to or that's been hidden with respect to your career. I feel like it's going to, I feel like it's just going to highlight your career. It may highlight sort of I'm not going to say your emotions related to your career, but like fantasy, right? And I feel like the full moon may perhaps burst your bubble. Like you may have thought your career was really doing this, or you thought that your reputation was really like this. And the full moon may illuminate the fact that it's not as idyllic, or it doesn't live up to your fantasy. So the full moon may be a little realistic when it comes to your career and your public life or your social standing or even your reputation. It doesn't have to be, but I think that that's how it may play out for some. All right. But otherwise, I feel like it's just going to show you what you've harvested. The full moon may provide you with a promotion. It may signal the end of a project that you've been working on, and it's going to give you recognition. You're going to receive praise. All of that great stuff is also possible with the full moon in Pisces. So that's definitely something to look forward to. All right. So next up, we've got Cancer Rising. All right, Cancer. So for September, the houses that are going to be emphasized are your second house of money and material possessions, your third house of ideas and communication, your fourth house of home and family, and your ninth house of spirituality. All right. So at the top of the month, we've got Venus in Leo, which is going to be in your second house. Venus in Leo in your second house is all about a focus on money, right? And perhaps being creative when it comes to money, standing out, Anything that has to do with you and sort of your personal satisfaction is going to be highlighted with Venus in Leo in your second house. Okay. Then during Virgo season, your third house is going to be illuminated and you'll have the Sun, Mercury, and Venus there. This is going to be your day-to-day transactions. You may find that during this time you're taking a short distance trip, maybe a weekend getaway kind of a thing. Your relationships with friends and with people who are in your immediate vicinity, like neighbors, community members, they may come into focus, particularly when Venus is in Virgo. Also your communications and your ideas, right? With Mercury being retrograde, I feel like Virgo season is going to be very contemplative for you. I feel like you're going to be rethinking a lot of things. It's also a great time to revisit certain specialized skills. So let's say you took a class on photography a couple of years ago. Mercury retrograde in Virgo in your third house is the perfect time to sort of look over those notes or sort of reopen that course, right? Anything specialized, any special skills, specific skills, you can definitely revisit those during Mercury retrograde, particularly when it's in Virgo. So that's definitely something to think about. And then during Libra season, your fourth house of home and family is going to be highlighted. So I feel like your relationship to family members, particularly parents, grandparents, or even roommates, I feel like those relationships are going to come into heavy focus during Libra season. The new moon in Libra is going to allow you to plant seeds related to things like property. So if you wanted to purchase property, if you want to change residences, if you want to start anything new with family, even if you want to start working from home, those are great seeds to plant at the new moon in Libra. Okay. And with Mercury retrograde in Libra, this is going to allow you to mend relationships with family members. It's going to allow you to revisit certain conversations you may have had with family members in the past. When it comes to property, this is a great time if you want to consider refinancing your home, if you want to look over any contracts related to any property. I wouldn't necessarily take action on them, but you can definitely look at them again and sort of understand the fine print, understand where you can make some changes once Mercury goes direct. Okay, and then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to illuminate your ninth house of higher education and long distance travel. So something at a distance from you may be highlighted, meaning that something in a different country comes to your attention, especially if you have things like business affairs, if you know people in different countries, something may happen with them or something may be emphasized with them at the full moon. I also feel like the full moon may signify the culmination of like a course. When I say course, I mean like a higher education course, like college, grad school, med school, law school. Excuse me. You may be completing those. A legal situation may be coming to a close at the full moon. It also just may be a time where you become aware of the fact that maybe you need to take a broader look at things. Maybe you need to start seeing the bigger picture of life, okay? And so you may feel this urge to want to expand your mind, broaden your horizons, be a little adventurous. I feel like the full moon may also illuminate that for you. So that's something to be mindful of, all right? So that was Cancer rising. So now we are moving on to Leo. All right. So for Leo rising, September is going to have the following areas of focus. Number 1, your first house of self. 2, your second house of money and assets. 3, your third house of ideas and communication. And your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources. All right. So at the beginning of the month, Venus in your sign is going to be highlighting your first house. So I feel like when Venus is in your first house, you guys are going to be extremely charismatic, very magnetic. You guys love to be the center of attention. And I feel like Venus in your sign allows you to be just that. It's like all eyes are on you. People can't help but notice you. People are drawn to you like moths to a flame, just like you like it. Okay. So I feel like, The top of the month is going to find you guys being extra charismatic, a bit sexy, alluring, all that great stuff. So you're definitely going to want to use that to your advantage. So be social, put yourself out there and get noticed. All right. Then you're going to have an emphasis on your second house when the sun moves into Virgo. And then you're also going to have Mercury and Venus in Virgo. Okay. So your second house is all about money and assets. So I feel like during Virgo season, it's going to be about getting organized and efficient when it comes to your money, especially with Mercury retrograde in there. I feel like you're going to want to review financial plans, savings plans, any documents having to do with assets, anything having to do with money, bank statements, all that stuff. Mercury retrograde is going to be great for you to review those and sort of go through them with a fine-tooth comb. And just get organized and efficient generally when it comes to money. When the sun moves into Libra, it's going to highlight your third house of communication and ideas. Now, this is the house that has to do with relationships because it has to do with how we communicate with people. So I feel like Libra season may be pretty busy for you. I feel like your things in your immediate neighborhood or vicinity are going to be kind of on and popping. I feel like, communication with neighbors, friends, community members, all of that kind of stuff is going to ramp up come Libra season. Now, when it comes to the new moon in Libra, I think you're going to have an opportunity to plant new seeds when it comes to business because the third house also has to do with transactions. If you want to plan a short trip, I feel like the new moon is going to be great for doing that or even going on a short trip at that time. And by and large, just talking to people, learning from people, all of that stuff is going to be excellent to do when the sun moves into Libra and during Libra season. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to highlight your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources. So your closest, most intimate relationships may be highlighted. I feel like when it comes to things like loans, insurance policies, taxes, inheritances, all of those things are governed by the 8th house. And I feel like the full moon is going to illuminate all those things. And with the presence of Uranus trine to the moon or sextile to the moon, the new moon, the full moon, sorry. I feel like you're probably going to experience something unexpected when it comes to an intimate partner. It also might signify like an unexpected bill or expense that comes up. So that's definitely something to be mindful of at the full moon in Pisces. But by and large, I feel like the full moon is just going to illuminate your desire for intimacy. It's going to highlight your intimate relationships and perhaps where they're not necessarily in balance and how you can sort of tip the scales so that this relationship feels equitable and harmonious. All right. So that's important to know for the full moon in Pisces. All right. So moving right along, we are up to Virgo Rising. All right, Virgo Rising. So for you, September has a focus on your 12th house of the unknown, your first house of self, your second house of money and assets, and your 7th house of relationships. So going into the month, there's this emphasis on your 12th house when Venus is in Leo. Venus in Leo in your 12th house is really about, I would say, your relationship to children. It also highlights romantic relationships, but on a very subconscious level. It's not so much about the relationship itself or even the other person. It's more about you, how you show up in these relationships and what that may mean, what you value, what values do you bring into these relationships. I feel like it's sort of a heavy contemplative time, but it gets you to really examine yourself and how you show up in these relationships. It also may spark your inner creativity. It may be a spiritual time because the 12th house is all about spirit. It's all about faith and faith in the unknown and the unseen. But it's all about, like, I feel like it may also be about bringing out your inner creativity. So it may be, I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a heavy time, but in a good way. Then you're going to have an emphasis on your first house, particularly during Virgo season. You're going to have the sun, Mercury retrograde, and Venus in your first house. This is just going to emphasize you, your thoughts, your outlook, your appearance. With Mercury going retrograde in your first house, I think it's going to be about reevaluating yourself, reevaluating your body, reevaluating things that are important to you and personal goals. Okay, so that's definitely important. Then you have an emphasis on your second house during Libra season. So you're going to have the Sun, Mercury retrograde, Venus, and the new moon in your second house. The second house is all about money. So I feel like Libra season is going to have a focus on money and assets, but not even just the money itself. It's all about like teamwork makes the dream work, right? So I feel like Libra season is going to be like, who do you have around you that that sort of contributes to your bottom line, that contributes to your assets, but also what do you value in relationships? What is important to you in relationships? I feel like those things are going to be highlighted during Libra season, particularly when Mercury is in Libra, Mercury retrograde in Libra. I feel like this is going to have you reevaluating past relationships and what value they have to you and whether they still have any value now. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to illuminate your seventh house of relationships. So I feel like something major with respect to your committed relationships may happen at that full moon. So this could be getting married. This could be moving in. It could signify a sort of culmination, right? A big crescendo when it comes to your committed relationships. And that's business or personal, right? This could also illuminate where things are sort of imbalanced in your relationships. With this dichotomy between Pisces and Virgo at the full moon, this could be perhaps the full moon may ask you, who are you serving in relationships? Are you serving the relationship or are you sort of just serving yourself? I feel like those are the questions that the full moon in Pisces will ask of you. I also feel like the full moon in Pisces may shed some light on sort of how you view relationships, because I said before, Pisces is all about fantasy, right? And I feel like the full moon is going to sort of shed light on that fantasy and whether your relationship lives up to that fantasy or not. All right. So we've got Virgo. So now we are up to Libra Rising. All right. So for September, you have an emphasis on your 11th house of friendship and goals, your 12th house of the unknown, your first house of you and yourself, and your 6th house of work and health. All right, Libra. So at the top of the month, we've got Venus in Leo, which highlights your 11th house. So I feel like at the top of the month, your friendships are definitely highlighted, your associations, and sort of how do you stand out and how do you identify when it comes to your friendships and your associations? Like, are you the leader of your friend group? Do you take charge? Do you have a leadership role in your associations and your groups and all of that? I feel like those are the themes that play out with Venus in Leo in your 11th house. Then come Virgo season, you have an emphasis on your 12th house because the Sun, Mercury retrograde, and Venus will be there. And, this is the time during Virgo season is the time that you guys rest. The season before your solar return is always marked by rest. It's a time when you rest, recharge, think about things, and get ready for your season, right? So that's what you'll be doing during the first half of the month. And with Mercury retrograde, I feel like you're going to do a lot of perhaps soul searching. You're going to be thinking about things from the past. People from the past may be coming back. Karma may be coming back to bite you in the ass or, reward you, whichever. But by and large, Virgo season is going to be about resting and recharging because come Libra season, it's all about you. That's when your first house will be lit. You'll have the Sun, Mercury retrograde, Venus, and the new moon in your first house. At that time, especially around the new moon, you guys are going to want to plant seeds having to do with any personal goals and aspirations. If you want to start a workout routine because you want to look different, if you want to change up your look, you want to change your outlook, start working on some goals, all of that new year, new me kind of energy that's available to you at Libra season and definitely with the new moon in Libra. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to illuminate your 6th house of work and health. Now, the full moon illuminates, right? So when it comes to health in particular, if you've been sort of glossing over a health matter, if you haven't sort of been looking at it through a realistic lens, I feel like the full moon is going to do that for you. So that may be a little shocking. It may be a little jarring, but that's just sort of how it goes, right? This may also signify the culmination of a work project or work period. That's pretty much how that could play out for you. Let's see, what else do we have with the full moon in Pisces in the 6th house? I think that's pretty much it. I think it's pretty much just illuminating work and health matters. Again, with the presence of Uranus, I feel like things may be a little surprising, but by and large, it may be a little boring, right? This may be where the full moon may illuminate where you need to be more of service. It may illuminate maybe perhaps where you need to scale back because it needs, things need to be balanced. And maybe the full moon is going to show you where you either need to work a little more or perhaps work a little less. All right. All right, so we are moving right along. Next up, we've got Scorpio Rising. So for you, Scorpio, the areas of focus this month are going to be your 10th house of career and public life, your 11th house of friendship and goals, your 12th house of the unknown, and your 5th house of creativity and children. So at the top of the month, we have an emphasis in your 10th house when Venus is in Leo. I feel like this is going to be the time where you want to stand out at work, where you want to set yourself apart from the crowd, where you may want to inject a little bit of your own personal touch in what you do, where you definitely want to relate to people on a more warm and, lighthearted sort of way. So if you're someone whose career involves something like YouTube or anything like that, social media, influencer kind of deal, you're going to want to relate to people on a more emotional, lighthearted, and warm sort of level. I think Venus in Leo is going to be perfect for that. So you may want to implement that into your operational strategy or into your media strategy. That's something to look into. Now, during Virgo season, your 11th house of friendship and goals is going to be illuminated. You're going to have the Sun, Mercury retrograde, and Venus in there. So this is going to put an emphasis on your friendships. With Venus in Virgo, I feel like it's going to be all about your friendships and perhaps how you could be of service to your friends. Also, how you value your friends and how they fit into your life on a day-to-day basis, right? Virgo is all about our daily routine. Venus in Virgo may be like taking stock of your friendships, maybe seeing who has to stay and who has to go. Virgo loves to compartmentalize things. So I feel like maybe you're going to be evaluating your friendships on an individual basis and how they fit into your life and if they make rational sense, right? With Mercury retrograde in Virgo, I feel like perhaps friendships from the past can be revisited. These are old friendships coming back, maybe old associations, old groups that you may have been a part of may come back into the fold. So that may be something to look forward to. Now, come Libra season, your 12th house is going to be illuminated, and this is going to be when you rest. So during Virgo season, Libra rests. So during Libra season, you guys rest, and it's going to be time for you to rest, recharge, and sort of reevaluate everything as you prepare for Scorpio season. Now, of all the signs, and you'll know if you remember what I said in the general portion, I said you don't want to sit out this new moon because it's going to be particularly advantageous. But for you, I feel like you're going to want to sit this new moon out because you're going to be resting and recharging. It's not necessarily the time to be planting new things. You'll definitely have the opportunity to do that with the new moon in Scorpio, right? That's when you can get to planting and all of that. But I feel like the new moon in Libra for you in particular is going to be about resting and recharging. So of all the signs, I feel like you guys are going to want to sit that one out. Okay. And the full moon in Pisces is going to illuminate your 5th house of romance, creativity, and children. So there may be a creative project that comes to a culmination. The fruits of a creative project that was done in the past may be time to harvest at the full moon. I feel like it's going to highlight your ideals when it comes to romance. So however you feel about relationships, I feel like that sort of feeling is going to come up, and it may be surprising because it may show you the reality of relationships. Relationships may not be living up to your ideal standards, and I feel like the full moon may illuminate that for you. The full moon may also illuminate your relationship with your children. Something having to do with your children may be coming to a culmination. Or something surprising with your kids may come up since Uranus is going to be in the mix with that full moon. But that's pretty much what you have to look forward to with that full moon. All right. So that was Scorpio. We are now up to Sagittarius. So Sagittarius Rising. Okay. So for September, the areas of focus for you are your 9th house of spirituality, your 10th house of career and public life, your 11th house of friendship and goals, and your 4th house of home and family. So I feel like September is going to start with you feeling very innovative when it comes to expressing yourself, when it comes to being romantic. You want to experience something new, and you're going to have this urge and this desire for adventure and expressing yourself. It's a very larger than life sort of energy. So I feel like you start off the month very high, hopeful, optimistic, especially when it comes to love, romance, and children. Okay. Now, during Virgo season, it's going to highlight your 10th house of career and public life. So Virgo season is the perfect time for you to get your career in order, to sort of get organized, get efficient, and get things running like a well-oiled machine. Especially if you run your own business, you're going to want to spend Virgo season sort of revamping your operations, cutting the fat when it comes to expenses, all of that boring, tedious stuff you're going to want to do while the sun is in Virgo. And with Mercury retrograde in Virgo, it's going to give you the opportunity to revamp career plans and goals and trajectories and spreadsheets. You're going to want to go through all of that stuff with a fine-tooth comb. Don't necessarily like implement new plans, like take plans of action, right? But I feel like it's a great time to sort of revisit all of those things and figure out what works and what doesn't. And then come Libra season, there's going to be an emphasis on your 11th house of friendship and goals. Now, with Libra being the relationship sign, Venus is also going to be in Libra. I feel like I'm like tongue-tied. I feel like your friendships are going to be front and center. This could also be a very social time for you, whether it's with friends, associates, different groups with which you identify. I feel like Libra season is going to be great for getting social, okay? Now, with the new moon in Libra, if you have any goals, anything, they call the 11th house the house where you wish upon a star. So if you have something that you really want, that you really desire, I feel like you're going to want to plant those seeds at the new moon, because that's going to be the perfect time to set the groundwork, right? Set the foundation for those lofty goals that we want to achieve in life. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to highlight your 4th house of home and domestic affairs. So at that time, something having to do with family may be illuminated, something having to do with your home, your apartment, your property. Sometimes it has to do with our lineage and our basic emotional needs. All of those things are up for grabs and may be illuminated at the full moon. It may also show you where you are a bit idealistic in terms of family, and it may sort of shed light on that in a realistic sort of way. Maybe you thought that your parents were one particular way, and I feel like the full moon may show you who they really are, right? For better or for worse. A home project or a property issue may come to culmination at the full moon. So maybe you had planted seeds of getting your own home, and now with the full moon, you finally have the keys and you can move in. Maybe a property deal finally comes to a close. Any of those things are up for grabs at the full moon in Pisces. Okay. So that was Sagittarius. So now we are up to Capricorn. All right, Capricorn Rising. So for you, September has a focus on your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources, your 9th house of spirituality, your 10th house of career and public life, and your 3rd house of ideas and communication. So at the top of the month, we've got Venus and Leo in your 8th house. This is all about sexy time. I feel like the beginning of the month for you is going to be extremely sexy. It's going to be about intimacy and sex and everything that goes with that. It's also the house of shared resources, and being that Venus rules money, I feel like money having to do from creative projects, money from romantic partners may come into play. You know what I just heard? I heard the Tinder swindler. So like getting money from partners in a creative sort of way. May be a theme for you at the beginning of the month. So that's definitely something to look forward to. I mean, don't get got. I'll say that. Don't be on the receiving end of that. Well, you might not want to be on the giving end of that either, because that's just not nice. But that may be something that plays out for someone, undoubtedly. Now, Virgo season is going to put an emphasis on your ninth house, which covers spirituality, higher education, and long distance travel. So you may be going on an exotic trip during Virgo season. You may be revisiting a place that you've been to before. Obviously, if you're revisiting it, you've been there before. I think I'm just being redundant. But someplace that's at a distance, right? So let's say you've been to Rio. Maybe you're going back to Rio during Virgo season, something like that. Long distance relationships may be highlighted, whether that's business or personal. You may also have an emphasis on relationships that are like teacher student, mentor mentee, spiritual guru, advisor. All of those kind of relationships may also come into the fold during Virgo season. Anything having to do with foreign commerce, foreign business, those may be coming back up for review with Mercury retrograde in Virgo in your ninth house. You guys are the sign of business, of money, all that good stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that many of you may have overseas business that, comes back into the fold with Mercury retrograde in Virgo in your ninth house. This could also be a time where you revisit coursework, like college coursework, grad school coursework, anything like that could be up for grabs. A legal issue may come back around, especially with Mercury retrograde. So that's something to be mindful of as well. And then come Libra season, your 10th house of career and public life will be illuminated, particularly your work relationship, your relationship with employees, fans, followers. Your reputation may definitely come into play during Libra season, especially with Mercury retrograde in Libra. Things that may affect your reputation from the past may come back around. So that's something to be mindful of. At the new moon in Libra, I feel like you guys can plant seeds related to your career. So if you want to start a business, you're going to want to plant those seeds. If you want to get a promotion, change career trajectory, those are all great things to do at the new moon. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to highlight your third house of communication and ideas. Whenever you have a moon transit in your third house, it usually tends to be a busy time. So I wouldn't be surprised if around September 10th, you guys are extremely busy. Lots of communications, lots of phone calls, emails, text messages, people in your neighborhood coming back and forth, doing all of that. I think that the full moon will be pretty busy for you. It may also highlight things having to do with siblings and extended family members. A project in your neighborhood or in your immediate vicinity may be coming to a culmination. Yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to full moon in Pisces in your third house. All right. But I definitely think it's going to be a busy time for you guys, especially when it comes to like business transactions. So that's definitely something to look forward to and be mindful of at that full moon. All right, we are making our way. We are now up to Aquarius Rising. All right, Aquarius. So for you, the areas of focus in September are your 7th house of relationships, your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources, your 9th house of spirituality and higher education, and your 2nd house of money and assets. So at the top of the month, we've got Venus and Leo in your 7th house. So I feel like for you, romance and relationships, committed relationships are definitely going to be a thing. Being childlike, being, lovey-dovey, being open, free, and vulnerable in your relationships, I definitely think is a theme that will play out while Venus is in Leo. Then with the sun moving into Virgo, it's going to highlight your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources. The sun, Mercury, and Venus will be in your 8th house. So I feel like during Virgo season, it's definitely about getting things in order in terms of things like loans, paperwork, taxes, insurance policies. You may have an inheritance that you have to sort of administer or sort of get organized. All of those other people, money kind of paperwork things, those are going to be things that you're going to want to pay attention to during Virgo season. And with Mercury in Virgo, I feel like you're going to want to go over all of that paperwork with a fine-tooth comb. In terms of intimacy and sex, I feel like it's not going to be very sexy. Virgo as the 8th house doesn't lend itself to being sexy. I think intimacy is going to be being of service and sort of catering to your partner, being catered to, but definitely not necessarily in a sexy kind of way, if that makes sense. Then when the sun moves into Libra, it's going to highlight your 9th house of higher education and long distance travel. So during Libra season, you may be taking an exotic trip someplace far. This may highlight a long distance relationship. With the new moon in Libra, this may be like, if let's say you meet someone randomly on a trip, right? And you guys end up living in 2 different cities, 2 different states, or 2 different countries. I feel like the new moon in Libra gives you the opportunity to plant the seeds to make a long distance relationship work if that's what you choose to do. With Mercury retrograde in your 9th house in Libra, this may have you revisiting legal situations, revisiting coursework. The 9th house also deals with spirituality. So some may find that they revert back to a previous faith that they used to practice. Previous spiritual practices may come back into the fold for you with Mercury retrograde. So that's definitely something to be mindful of. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to highlight your 2nd house of money and material possessions. So let's say that you've been saving up for a big ticket item. I feel like the full moon in Pisces, you'll realize that maybe you've saved up enough and now you can finally purchase it. Maybe an investment matures and you're able to reap the fruits of that. This may also highlight where things in your life when it comes to money so maybe you had a certain idea about money. Maybe you looked at your assets a certain way. And I feel like the full moon may illuminate that for better or for worse and kind of show you the reality of your money situation, of your savings, of your investments, things like that. But I also feel like any work that you've put in terms of money, in terms of saving, I think that you'll be able to reap that harvest at the full moon in Pisces. So that's something to look forward to. All right, my loves. And we are finally, last but not least, at Pisces Rising. All right, Pisces. So for you, the areas of focus for September are your 6th house of work and health, your 7th house of relationships, your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources, and your 1st house of you. All right, so at the top of the month, we've got Venus in Leo in your 6th house. The 6th house is all about work and health. So your relationship with coworkers, with clients is definitely going to still be a focus, right? At least until the 5th when Venus moves into Virgo. So at that time, I feel like it's about standing out at work, standing out amongst your coworkers, amongst clients. There's going to be a emphasis on service, perhaps how you serve them, how they serve you, especially if you work in a service-based industry. I feel like it's going to be time to sort of revamp those things. And then during when the sun moves into Virgo, it's going to have an emphasis on your 7th house of relationships. And so I feel like definitely when Mercury goes retrograde in Virgo, this is going to be a great time to revisit past relationships. Maybe an ex comes back around, you know the deal with Mercury retrograde. But I also feel like it's going to be about sort of understanding your values when it comes to relationships and revisiting those. You know, we all usually have a criteria list when it comes to partnerships, right? What we look for in a partner, what we want our relationship to be. And I feel like with Mercury retrograde, it's going to give you the opportunity to reassess that list and maybe revamp that list, see what has worked, see what maybe needs to be redone, reevaluated. And then come Mercury going direct, I feel like you'll have the opportunity to sort of take this new list out for a spin and maybe try out these new values on a new partner, maybe even an existing partner, right? But I think it's going to be a time where you reevaluate your relationship criteria and what values you hold in relationships. Now, during Libra season, it's going to highlight your 8th house of intimacy and shared resources. So your intimate relationships obviously are going to come into the fold during Libra season. I feel like at the new moon, it's the perfect opportunity to not only sow seeds of intimacy, but if you are looking for other people's money, so if you're looking for loans, if you're looking for funding, anything like that, you're going to want to plant those seeds at the new moon because that's basically what it's for. All right. And by and large, I feel like just your relationship with intimacy, intimate topics. The eighth house also covers like repressed emotions and things like that. So I feel like any repressed emotions having to do with relationships, so like things like codependency, abandonment, all that fun shit that we all love, that can sort of come up during Libra season for you. So that's important to be mindful of. And then finally, the full moon in Pisces is going to be in your first house. So I feel like it's going to illuminate a lot about you. If you've been working on any personal goals, particularly since the new moon in Pisces earlier in the year, I feel like those may come to fruition at the full moon. I just feel like it's going to illuminate a lot about yourself, perhaps your attitude, perhaps your outlook on life, perhaps maybe even your physical body. I feel like all of those things are going to be illuminated and come into the fold at the full moon in Pisces. So that is something to look forward to. All right, my loves. That has been the September monthly astro forecast. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can take going into September. All right. I wish you all the best, especially with Mercury retrograde. Usually I don't take, not that I don't take Mercury retrograde so seriously, but I usually don't try to give it too much energy because I feel like when you do that, things get worse. But for me, it's already been kicking my ass. So I can't help but acknowledge it, but I wish you all the best for September. I wish that you all harvest the abundance that is your birthright this month. Okay. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to book a personal reading with me, order an astrology report, or check out my shop, all of those links are in the description box below. So don't forget to check those out. Happy September, and I will see you guys in my next video. Take care.